The end in mind is actually probably the motivation more than anything else that brought us here, and that gets me really excited about the opportunity here. And the end in mind for me is that a student would be an on-mission disciple-making leader wherever they land in life.
Have you ever felt like God was calling you to something more? Maybe you've sensed a nudge, a stirring that you can't quite put into words. That's what this podcast is all about. Here we share the story of God doing something new and powerful right here in Morehead, Kentucky. I'm Eli, and I'm excited to share this journey with you. In just a few minutes, you'll also hear from my friend Dylan Bjorklund, a minister, husband, father, and now church planter. He's stepping out in faith to follow God's call, and I think his story is going to inspire you. Before we jump in, I want to encourage you with these powerful words from Ephesians 3:20-21. Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all that we ask or think, according to the power at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations forever and ever. As you listen today, I want you to ask yourself, what might God want to do through you? You can do more than you imagine by his power for his glory. And maybe, just maybe, this episode will help you take that next step of obedience. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. For those of you that may be listening, this is the Morecast, talking with Dylan Bjorklund, church planter in Morehead, Kentucky. It's been a couple months since we've talked, so Dylan, it's good to see you again, and give us an update on what's going on.
Yeah, so this is really cool because every other episode we've recorded is when we were living in Winchester, and so this is the first episode where we're recording live from Morehead. So we were able to move and have been here for about a month and a half. And just as we were talking, Eli, right before we started this, is just settling into a new home, which you just bought your new home too, which is great and exciting. But moving also has a lot of pains to it and getting settled in. But still, the home's really nice and it's a really good location. Some really cool things. Within like the first 2 days, we had met all of our neighbors. They just come and introduce themselves to us, and really cool story. So Morehead is just down the interstate from Grayson, Kentucky, home of Kentucky Christian University. And, as I've been traveling around talking about our work and what we're doing here in Morehead to like different churches and things, I've had a lot of people ask, what's going to be our relationship with KCU? They're just down the road. And also several people have been like, you need to get connected with this guy named Dr. Schoaf. Dr. Schoaf is the dean of the School of Bible and Ministry at KCU. And so we move in, and I think it's 2 or 3 days. And my neighbor who lives behind me comes down because he had moved in not too long ago and had internet installed, but they forgot to bury the line. And so it was running through my yard. And so he was coming to ask me about it. Who was it other than Dr. Schoaf from KCU? So neighbor who lives behind me, and him and I have started to talk a little bit. So that's been kind of cool. And then we moved in, and I met. So another one of my neighbors was a high school teacher of mine. Both Cassie and I when we were growing up. So some really cool things like that in our neighborhood that we've moved into here. So it's been great. And then we started a Bible study on Sunday nights. We rented out a community center here in Morehead, and first night we had 9 people show up, which was great. It was awesome. It was really cool, and some cool stories there of individuals that we got reconnected with, or people that came and just how they came. The next week, we had a whopping 2 people show up. Someone asked me, well, what'd you do to run them all off? The second Sunday, though, was Mother's Day, so, it was kind of hard. But Anyways, that's been kind of interesting. I think Cass and I, probably me more than Cassie, was trying to jump in things a little too quickly. We probably started that Bible study faster than we should have. So summer's a hard time to get anything started, right?
Yep.
Everybody's traveling vacations, and the month of May and June, you've got Mother's Day, Memorial Day, graduation, weddings, all that kind of stuff. So it's a busy, busy time. So we have just decided to really just invest in the people that we've met and build individual relationships and try to really strengthen those, and opening up our home just to be used for hospitality and meeting people for coffee and lunch and all those kind of things, building those opportunities and looking for some service opportunities. And then we've done everything to, I've started substitute teaching. Well, school's out now, but for the month that we were here. And I'm going to tell you that was an incredible opportunity. Like the doors already opened up just in getting to meet other teachers and administrators. So, and then Cassie's, taking the girls to library time, preschool time at the library on Tuesday. So starting to get to meet people that way. So, it is cool that we've come here at this time, this summer, when everybody's out. You know what I mean? And, they're out in the parks, they're out and, so we're just, that's how we're going to be spending our summer is just thinking of ourselves less as church planters right now and more as just missionaries.
Yep.
Right? Like just getting to know people, building relationships, seeing where they're at in their faith. And then once fall comes, maybe trying to start to bring people together. So, but that's where we're at. It has had some frustrations to it. I won't say that it hasn't, but more often than not, it's been great. And then I continue to travel around every Sunday, church to church, sharing about what we're doing, and that's been great. The Lord keeps opening doors and blessing there. So, good stuff.
Good. Awesome. How far are you guys in your new house from the MSU campus?
I can get there in less than 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. So it's not too far. And it's actually just a straight stretch. And the reason it's 10, 15 minutes has to do with stoplights and traffic more than it does because we're just far out in the country or anything. So, we're close by.
So we want to talk a little bit today about specifically ministry to the students at MSU. That's been a big part of your calling and desire with this church plant, right? So there's some interesting dynamics when it comes to ministering to college students, some of which we've already touched on in previous conversations. But Dylan, can you just kind of give us the end in mind, what your goal is, what your hope is for MSU students whom that you will have relationships with once they graduate from MSU?
Yeah. I think that's a great question, and really, it is the end in mind is actually the probably the motivation more than anything else that brought us here, and that gets me really excited about the opportunity here. And the end in mind for me is that that a student would be an on mission disciple making leader wherever they land in life. What I mean by that, First, for me, I define a disciple as someone who's following Jesus, being changed by Jesus, and committed to the mission of Jesus. It is a holistic approach. Like my mind is informed, my heart's inflamed, my hands are activated, and my feet are ready to share the gospel. It is way more than just come to church on Sunday morning, checking off the box kind of thing. Like it's my whole life is being run through the filter of what does Jesus in the scriptures say how I ought to live, and I want to live in that way. So just a radical, set-apart life, and I actually think that's what we all are called to be. We've sometimes lowered that bar, but nevertheless, but a disciple, if you'll notice at the end of me defining a disciple, is that they're committed to the mission of Jesus. So it's not merely enough to just be a good moral person who has a deep relationship with God. It is also part of the command of Jesus is that we go and make more disciples, right? Part of Right. In Matthew 28, the Great Commission is teach them to obey all that I've commanded you. Part of what we're to teach others to obey is how to share their faith and make more disciples. Jesus, in calling the first disciples, says, I will make you fishers of men. This isn't something intended to be passed on to. It's not something just for the professionals. Like every follower of Jesus is called to this. And so actually, this is why our church planning organization, they're called Be One, Make One. Be a disciple, make a disciple. And in fact, the way I first got connected with them was at a conference, and it was so shallow, Eli. I had no idea who they are. I didn't know they were a church planning group. I just liked their name, and so I showed up to their breakout session. But I still, that concept, like you yourself are a disciple, but you're making disciples. So that's our end goal in mind. Now, I think that's actually probably the end goal that every leader in the church should have for anyone. But I'm going to add to that a disciple maker who's on mission, to lead on mission, because here's what I think almost everyone is recognizing in the church is there is a leadership pipeline problem, right? Where are our next preachers coming from? Where are our next elders coming from? Where are our next? And right now, and actually just a conference I attended last month, that's what it was all about. It's about facing the future, trying to raise up the next generation of kingdom leaders. I think you and I, so we met in Bible college. We graduated high school, went to a 4-year Bible college institute, and then went into ministry, right?
Yep.
I don't know how much of that is the future for training up leaders.
Why
Now,
do you think that? Why? First of all, why was that a past model? And why do you think are some of the barriers to that being a model in the future or even in the present?
That's a great question. I don't know that I know why it was the past model. I do think part of the reason it was the past model is because there was a time in American history where Christianity was the dominant culture and predominant thought. And even if people weren't truly followers of Jesus, they respected the church. They respected Christian thought. The church and preaching and ministry were still considered valuable. I mean, at one time in American history, now this is a long time ago, probably towards its beginning, I mean, the minister, the preacher, was probably one of the most respected people in town.
Right.
Now, I think probably the least respected person in some ways, depending on the area. I mean, I think they're sometimes compared to like car salesmen, like the least trustworthy, respected people, at least trustworthy, at least. But so I think there is the shift in that regard. The other thing that I would say is this is true. So I was mentioned Dr. Schoaf earlier, my neighbor. He's in this. He's he's in the 4-year institute and still believes in. And I actually think it still has a role. I think we shouldn't just give up on it entirely. That training for 4 years in ministry at a higher institution. But and he brought up a good point. I mean, we are in a population decline, right? I mean, we're past the baby boomer age. I mean, even right now, it's not a political statement as such, but the administration, the Trump administration, is considering giving a baby bonus, if you will, for families to just start having kids so that we can increase the population. So just think about this. At one point, the pool was, this large, and then not everyone who graduates from high school is going to college, so that shrinks down a little bit. And then you've got all of these degrees that people could choose from. Ministry is going to be, a small portion of that. Now shrink the population size down, right? And all of a sudden it shrinks. So that's what I think. I think that's a factor, and it makes a lot of sense to me.
In some ways, it's like when church, Christianity, whatever, was more popular in culture, I think in a lot of ways, culture discipled people.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about ethics and how to live your life. If Christian values are more on the defensive now, that would make sense that would be contributing to a lack of people going into ministry. I felt this a little bit, and we're talking 10 years ago at Bible college. I felt even then, there was a recognizing of that Bible college also had to disciple.
Mm-hmm.
Picked up on that too.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't feel like we were all there to be trained for ministry. That was part of it, but also felt like there's this underlying thing of also the Bible college was taking on this responsibility of we need to disciple these kids who are coming out of churches
Yep.
undiscipled.
Yeah, so you're exactly right. And I was going to say that's, I think, the second. So there is the culture is not the same. You know what I mean? It's not a Christian culture. Not as many people are thinking about it. There's the population decrease. Just not as many people out there. I mean, the reality is it's not just in the ministry. I mean, every field is looking for people, right? But I was going to say too is there has been, and it's interesting to me for whatever reason, there's been a generation within the church where it was not a focus of raising up or sending people off to Bible college. I don't know if there was what happened there, but probably for youth ministers like yours or mine growing up, or people, and I think we even had this conversation at one point, Eli, in college. It's just like it was that whole thing of, hey, why don't you go to Bible college for a year and just try it out? Even if that you weren't going into ministry, and it was almost this like. Tactic, so to speak, that was used to like get you at least thinking about it, right? And so youth ministers did a lot more time in taking kids to do college campus visits and all that kind of stuff, or summer camp, church camp. You would have college teams that would come down, and I mean those were huge. I was talking to so there's another professor. He's a retired professor, KCU, lives in Morehead, and I had coffee with him last week, and we were talking about this some. And I just said, all the things, it's interesting when you talk to guys in ministry, what are the things that got you into ministry? And I hear a lot of the same things, and it was true for me. One, gave me experience when I was young. So I had the opportunity by the time I got to college to have preached probably close to 20 times because of youth Sundays and these things like that. Second is church camp. And getting exposure. And then our youth minister taking us to these retreats or to these events on college campuses. All those were instrumental. And you hear guys, and they say the same kinds of things, and yet in their ministry today, they're not doing any of those things, right? They're not giving kids the opportunity to take over the Sunday morning and preach. For whatever reason, we've given up on traditional church camp. CIY, love it. It's a great experience, and colleges are involved in all those kind of things. But it's not. It has a different focus to it.
It feels like those events are more geared towards bring your kids who are maybe on the fringes, and we will help get them past, to make decisions, initial decisions for Christ. Whereas I remember, again, going to church camp, you're going there because you want to grow in your faith that you already have.
That's right.
All the kids around you.
Yeah, and then there's the thing of what you're saying too is even guys who go into Bible college, and I've this is interesting when CCU, right before it was ending its time, the church I was at the time, we were looking into supporting CCU. We had stopped for various reasons, so we were having this conversation, and the dean at the time was saying that students coming in were not like students who came in 20 years ago. What used to be a entry-level course was now like a junior, senior level course. Because you could assume 20 years ago that the average student walking into Bible college knew the books of the Bible, knew the basic stories of the Bible, knew how not the details. Yes, we didn't know Greek, all that kind of stuff, but we had a basic understanding of Scripture. It's like this guy was telling us, it's like freshman year, we're like teaching them the books of the Bible, teaching them there's an Old and New Testament. So it is interesting, this whole thing. So, but I still think there is a time and a place for places like Kentucky Christian University. But there's also opportunities for a place like a Louisville Bible College, which is not has the same accreditation as a KCU. It's small. It's entirely commuter. It's offering classes and giving certificates and degrees and things like that. But it's more flexible. And I just think we're at a time right now where we have to think innovatively. The church does, of how we're going to train and raise up people. And so this is, again, come back to like why we're here in Morehead. I think about this region, this area. There are so many churches who are many of them are dying. Some of them, though, that are hanging on are struggling. And I think we've brought this up multiple times, struggling to keep ministers, to raise up elders and all those kinds of things. And you don't have, well, first, there's just not a lot of full-time guys who've had the 4-year degree coming to this area. And most of those churches can't support those kind of guys anyways. And the reality is, even if all the Bible colleges were able to fill, to increase their enrollment and really start to fill those pipelines, I still don't know that it would help this area and this region. And so we have to begin to think bivocationally. Mm-hmm. Like most guys who are going to be in many of these churches already, actually, in fact, most of them who are in any of these churches are bivocational. But how do we give them some kind of training, right? So that when they're getting up to lead in their church, whether it is as the preacher who's giving the sermon every week or as an elder, how do we give them some level of training so that they're not susceptible to false teaching and doctrine and really derail the church and go off in a direction that Christ never intended? And so this is, again, where we just have to be innovative. And this is what gets me most excited about the opportunity at Morehead, is because I do think this generation right now, Gen Z, is hungry and excited. They want to be a part of making a difference in some way. I don't think that they're interested in the extremely overproduced big mega church mentality anymore. I think they're looking for something authentic and real, and they want deep relationships. I have seen, this is not universally true, but I've seen a lot of students, showing up with Bibles and notebooks to church, like they're that hungry. You know what I mean? Like they're wanting to learn. They want to grow. And so we, that's kind of the thought process. Like, how do we develop these relationships and really our church it becomes a training center of sorts, and gives some kind of foundation. Doesn't give them everything, but some kind of foundation, so that they're at least on the road or have the resources to become a leader wherever they land. And so that's our end goal in mind. And so we, and I've not done well of this here recently, but early on, as I was talking to churches in the area that are close by to Morehead, I told them, I said, hey, even if you don't support us financially, that was the original reason why I was calling them, right? I said, I'd like to maintain a relationship, because you may have students who come to MSU who we would like to get connected with, and they may leave here and go back home. Mm-hmm. Or we may have students who move back to your town. And what we would like to do is not just say, oh, hey, we are so glad that you're a part of our church for the last 4 years. Hey, go be a great disciple maker for the kingdom. And it's just like, we'd like to get them connected in a local church. We prioritize that in their 4 years here. Now let's go and help them get plugged in. And then what I'd love to be able to tell, ministers of these churches is, hey, this guy, you really need to get them plugged in fast, right? They're on fire. They've been growing in their faith leaps and bounds. You've got a small group they can lead, a Sunday school class they can teach, like something. And I think that begins to help in some ways fill the pipeline. And the other reality is, the Lord works on people's hearts. I've known students who are headed for a degree in whatever, nursing, education, engineering, and the call to ministry just grabbed their heart, and so they changed. And so I would anticipate that as we're working with students and we're talking about this, that we may capture some people, and maybe they then decide to go up the road to KCU or however they end up deciding to do that. But anyways, that's the end goal in mind, is like, instead of after 4 years, them losing their faith and dropping out of the church. It's that their faith is built up. They really become these on mission, on fire kingdom leaders, disciple makers that are plugged in, that we help them get plugged into a local church wherever they're going to land in life. I just, and I think it's going to make an impact in more than just our city. I love Acts 13. Antioch was a sending church. That's the kind of church I want to lead. We send people.
Thanks for watching and listening to this episode of the Morecast. We hope you'll join us again for future conversations. We invite you to pray for the church plant and the people of Morehead. Your prayers mean more than you know. If you'd like to connect with Dylan or learn more about the church plant, don't hesitate to reach out. He'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care and be blessed.